It's summer solstice, a brand of ice lolly.
Answer me this, answer me this.
Ooey, you do you look just like Buddy Holly?
Answer me this, answer me this. Helen and Ollie, answer me this.
Thanks to Shauna from Adelaide, we're starting this episode with a line we have never started an episode of Answer Me This before, which is, my husband is a cobbler. The other day, he took in a pair of boots, and when he started to repair them, he realised there was something shoved down in the front of the boot. This is not that unusual. Sometimes fastidious people stuff their boots with paper so they keep their shape. However, on pulling out the items, he discovered a G-string, not for a guitar, a sports bra and a crop top, obviously used and sweaty. Anyway, we had a bit of a brainstorm over a glass of booze and decided that the correct course of action was to bag these items separately and hand them back to the customer with the mended boots. Satisfying all round. No one gets embarrassed, but a very subtle shaming nonetheless.
I agree. What is left for us to comment on here? What problem could be left to solve?
However, my husband has now forgotten which customer is responsible for stuffing her soiled unders into her boots.
Oh dear.
Is it Ms. Harris or Ms. Vandergast? That's not the question for us. Ollie, answer me this. What is his course of action now? I don't understand. Do you understand? Surely whoever comes to pick up the boots is the correct person. Why do you have to know beforehand?
That's an interesting point.
You give the bag with the boots.
Yeah, but if they've both got boots, I mean, there must be a reason why he's confused.
Maybe he's forgotten which boots he took the items out of.
I actually think the solution to this is fairly simple. It would be embarrassing to give someone's soiled knickers back to someone to whom they didn't belong.
Yes.
However, if you had planned to do what really you should have planned to do all along, which is launder the knickers and then give them back in a nice sealed bag, as if you're a dry cleaners, not just a cobbler. I know that's going to cost you a little bit.
It's above and beyond.
It's
to
above
have
and
to
beyond.
handle them anyway, but let alone clean them.
Sure, but
what if they wash them on the wrong cycle and the knickers and sports bra get degraded and they get blamed?
That's unlikely.
not.
I think if you'd done that and then they were nicely presented, then it's not embarrassing, especially if you put the crop top over the top so that the person who it isn't can't see that there's knickers in there.
I think the
just say, are these your clothes as well, to the customer when they come in? And if it isn't, they'll say no. If it is, they'll say, oh, you laundered them for me as well. That is so sweet of you. And then you've built customer loyalty into what could have been an embarrassing incident.
I would be unbelievably creeped out if a stranger did my laundry for me, even if it was
even
because
I've
I'd been
given it to them.
Yeah, but I hadn't deliberately given it to them. Yes, I would hate it. I don't think you need to launder them though for that, Ollie. I think your most important suggestion was putting the crop top on top, so it's the least intimate item of clothing. But just give them it in a bag, and they can infer whether it's dirty or not.
We had a pair of wellies on our doorstep.
What?
The whole way through the winter. Our wellies.
Oh, okay.
So that because we live in the country, when you go outside and it's muddy, good to have wellies right there, so you can change from your normal shoes into them. And they were there on the doorstep right the way through the winter. And I ordered my second cousin a 21st birthday present from the internet. It was a watch. And it never arrived. So I wrote to the company and I was like, this is outrageous. This is his 21st. You know, you've ruined his birthday, da-da-da. And they were adamant that they delivered it. And I knew they hadn't. Anyway, it turned out the postie had put it in the welly boot.
That's incredibly weird.
Yeah.
You would have to put the note through the door saying...
In the welly boot.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was only actually when he came round dressed in a Christmas pudding onesie for his time to give me a tip round that
Well,
he
he's
said...
not wearing uniform. He's not getting a tip if he's out of uniform.
that he said, all right, mate, how are you? Merry Christmas. Oh, did you get the parcel that I put in your welly boot 3 weeks ago? And I was obviously grateful that he tried to deliver something when we weren't there, but also so angry that he'd been responsible for this chaos that I then didn't give him a tip. So his extra level of service backfired dramatically upon him.
Well, it's going to backfire on you when he puts other things in those welly boots.
Yeah, well, crop top and bra belonging to someone else.
I think it could be something a little bit more squidgy.
Hello, this is Chris in Bury St Edmunds. Helen and Ollie, answer me this. My wife and I were just finishing off our curry and tidying away the remains. And we were wondering, has anyone in the history of takeaway food ever countenanced the opening of, let alone the eating of, the sad little bag of salad that comes with an Indian takeaway? Why on earth would you include that? Who thinks, a little bit of salad, that'll just seal the deal?
I've eaten a bag of salad.
Me too.
Even though our local place is pretty much a bag of sliced onion.
Me too. Basically just chopped white onion and a bit of lettuce and maybe if you're lucky some coriander leaf, but I mean you've got to be really,
that's by accident.
That's top end.
Design. One tomato slice and a lemon wedge.
Yeah.
I've eaten it because sometimes you want something to cut the spicy, greasy, rich food.
I think as well it's recognisable, isn't it? You know, we have to remember it's been a phenomenal success, the launch of the Indian takeaway in Britain over the last 3 or 4 decades. But when it first began here, this sort of, very bizarrely coloured foreign stuff.
Stuff that tastes of something. What is it?
Exactly. Packed full of flavour and foreign ingredients. When people first saw that, I think it probably would have been quite reassuring to at least be able to identify an onion.
Ever popular in Britain, onions.
The other thing that I think, and this is just a theory, I don't know, but my guess is when Indian takeaway started up, really the only other takeaway that there was, apart from, I guess, pizza, would have been Chinese. That was the big success on the British high street. And I think the Indians looked at what the Chinese takeaways were doing. What were they doing? They were chucking in the prawn crackers for free.
Right. So they think free things. People love free things.
People love free things.
What's cheap? Crap iceberg lettuce.
Well, I think what they probably thought initially, and it remains with us, indeed, poppadoms. And poppadoms are the prawn crackers of the Indian takeaway.
But a lot bigger.
But then, classic immigrant mentality, they're like, how can we better that? How can we slightly provide a better service and edge it over the Chinese? Free bag of lettuce and onion as well.
Well, that could have happened the reverse way. Chinese takeaways might have been like, well, the Indians are doing very well. What can we give people?
Yeah.
Prawn crackers. Here's a question from Jace from Leicester who says, I have a colleague at work who is a massive fan of Mike Oldfield.
Don't we all?
I work on my own, so no. I overheard Tubular Bells as her ringtone, and she explained at great length that she loved his work and bought so many of his albums.
Yeah, I imagine if you're a big fan of Tubular Bells, then brevity isn't really a strong suit of yours.
She shares this love of his work with her 2 daughters.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it? I've heard that it's a gene you pass on, the Oldfield gene.
It might be recessive, like being ginger.
And she said they were all devastated by his death last year at such a relatively young age, Mike Oldfield having been born in 1953. They even held a teary-eyed candlelit vigil listening to Omadorn or such multi-instrumental nonsense. Guessing Jace from Leicester is not such a Mike Oldfield fan. So, Ollie, answer me this. How do I explain, without making her look like a complete twatbox, that her musical hero is very much alive?
Complete Twatbox, I think, is the name of the 5 CD box set of Oldfield's work.
Is it just 5 CDs, not 50?
Well, actually, I don't think you need to feel that guilty because, yes, there was an Oldfield death hoax earlier this year.
Oh, was there?
And
was it a Twitter thing or not Twitter?
Facebook mainly, as far as I can tell, but of course Twitter went mad for it as well.
Why do people do that?
Because they're twats.
Awful. Imagine how happy she's going to be.
Exactly.
It won't make her feel like a twat, but she'll be the happiest woman alive, except then she's got to go through the grief all over again.
When he actually does die. Yeah. Although you would be pointing out to her that she can't use Google. That's not great.
Well, maybe she doesn't know that she can't use Google because she's never heard of Google.
I think she'd thank you for it, though, wouldn't she?
I think so. So this is how I would do it, Jace. I would send her a email with 3 or 4 links to articles about the death hoax. What you do is you say, hey, friend, I know you're a Mike Oldfield fan. Spotted this, thought you should know! ! 4 links. So it looks like loads of people fell for it. Because actually, in fairness, they did. Like, over 1 million people liked on Facebook Mike Oldfield RIP page.
They may not have been fans.
Yeah, I know. Cumbersome, isn't it, not having a dislike for death? But anyway, send those links, and then she'll think, oh, OK, well, lots of people fell for this. This is the thing that was in the news. It's not just us.
But easier solution for you, Jace. Go to mikeoldfieldofficial.com, Mike Oldfield's official website, and sign her up for the Mike Oldfield updates.
I think my idea is better, but I like the fact we've provided 2 solutions.
Mike Oldfield's such a strange character, isn't he?
Very weird.
He's kind of like a Brian Eno with no credibility who sold lots more records.
And yet, Mike Oldfield's Moonlight Shadow is the first song I can ever remember hearing.
Mike Oldfield?
Yeah.
What do you mean, and yet, as if that would make him more cool? Tainted by connection with young Helen Zaltzman, he should surely be a folk hero.
It's just you can't choose these landmarks in your life.
Yeah, the thing about Mike Oldfield is he was, actually, when you think about it, super cool in the 70s. Not only was Tubular Bells a kind of groundbreaking album and it introduced electronic music and launched Virgin Records, all of that quite cool anyway, but then it became the soundtrack to The Exorcist, genuinely cool.
Oh, right.
And then, off the back of that, like with that as your ground, he then did the royal wedding anthem for Charles and Di.
No!
And recorded an album called QE2, named after the cruise liner.
Was he
It's like he
angling
deliberately
for-
sabotaged his own call immediately.
Maybe he just wanted free cruise tickets.
Who doesn't?
Me.
Is that right, though?
I think I would have a bad time on a cruise.
You see, now I'm not naturally someone who would want to go cruising, and don't interpret that in any other way than getting on a boat. But if someone now gave
To
me
look for men.
free tickets on a gay P&O cruise ship, I would consider going, because I'd be interested to know what that was like.
I'd like to go
But I
on...
wouldn't pay for it, that's what I'm saying. If someone wants to give me free tickets for a cruise, that's the circumstance under which I'd try cruising.
The cruise I would enjoy is going around the fjords of Norway with my mum, because she's always wanted to do that. My dad doesn't want to go, so I'd like to go
You
with
should
her.
do that.
Yeah, I should go. I should do that. So if any of you could give me free ones, that would make me and my mum really happy.
There we go. So we've both blagged free cruise ships. You never
Or
know
have
who's
we?
listening. Martin, would you like a cruise of any
Sellouts.
kind? Maybe an Oldfield cruise?
No, I think I'd be right.
Maybe that is, though, what happened. Maybe he did get free tickets on the QE2 for life,
I
which...
just don't, but it's so strange. Like, I can think of so few artists who are so important to a particular generation, and you ask someone above that age, and they would have no idea.
No idea.
Like maybe like Kiss in America.
Yeah.
Like no one in this country who's younger than like 30 cares or knows who Kiss is.
Yeah, sure, but if they heard
What is that?
What's
that's
that?
Tubular Bells.
Oh, right.
They wouldn't. They would know. I mean, maybe not for my rendition, but they would know. They wouldn't know that's Mike Oldfield, but they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I've heard that."
Oh, that's familiar.
Yeah. I mean, but I guess it's just like a ringtone, isn't it, to kids now? He's quite reclusive as well. For tax reasons, he's lived all over the
Oh,
world.
is he? Where
Yeah.
does he live now?
Bit of Ibiza, bit of Bahamas. Yeah.
In
so-
Ibiza, is he playing the super clubs there? That'd be really funny.
Actually,
he turned up to Manumission. It was Mike Oldfield.
I think you laugh, but I think that's happened. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, he is a pioneer of electric music, so I
Yes.
guess he would have.
I
It would be
know.
Calvin Harris featuring Mike Oldfield, wouldn't it? But there's still some cred there, I guess.
A lot of pioneers don't necessarily travel well 30 years hence.
Well, but they said that about Nile Rodgers, didn't they? And he's come around again. I mean,
but
in a
he
way,
went
just
away
wait.
and came
Yeah,
back.
exactly. That's what I mean. But it is entirely conceivable. In fact, I'd even put a bet on it that
Daft Punk with
if
Mike
you're listening
Oldfield.
if you're listening to this now in 2020, I bet there's a Daft Punk record with Mike Oldfield on it.
I've got a question.
Email your question to answer me this podcast at googlemail.com.
To answer me to this podcast at googlemail.com.
To answer me this podcast at googlemail.com.
To answer me to this podcast at googlemail.com.
So, retrospectors, what historical events are we ticking off on this week's run of Today in History?
On Monday, the anniversary of the day Ozzy Osbourne and a bat came face to face on stage.
On Tuesday, we go back to the future with a potted history of the DeLorean.
On Wednesday, why is the Pope guarded by those guys in floofy hats?
On Thursday, how the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ended up in Cleveland.
And on Friday, was Henry VIII really an asshole, or was it just the result of a jousting accident?
We discuss this and more on Today in History with the Retrospectors. 10 minutes each weekday, wherever you get your podcasts.
It's wedding season. Hooray!
Oh, people hating the people they used to love.
My annual opportunity to reaffirm why I absolutely have no interest in getting married whatsoever. Elizabeth is in Lincoln, and she says, I'm getting married next month.
Congratulations.
It's all going fine, which is good, isn't it?
Fine
Yeah.
is pretty good at this
Not
stage.
so dramatic for our purposes, but, good for you.
At this stage, I had started to mentally collapse and I started frantically making a lot of patchwork tablecloths against all rationality.
Well, there you are. Maybe you have that to look forward to, Elizabeth. She says, it's all going fine, but plus ones are the bane of my life when it's come to the invite list.
Oh dear, sorry.
We're having a pretty small wedding and reception. I think the less expensive randoms I have to pay for, the better. So that is her take on plus ones.
Fair enough.
They're expensive randoms. That's nice,
Right.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I understand.
Price-
Rather than the
baggage.
people who are making her friends happy.
Yeah, sod happiness. That's not what this is about.
One of my bridesmaids, continues Elizabeth, is someone who I made friends with on a uni course. She always sounds like she's commodifying this friendship, doesn't she? Rather than just saying, one of my friends is a friend from uni.
She's a B- friend.
Exactly, yeah.
If I'd met her at yoga, B+.
She started compartmentalising. You can feel that.
That sounds like a low 2-1 to me.
But I think Wedmin does this to people. She doesn't really have any other links to other groups of friends at the wedding. And as a result, I've said she can have a plus one.
That was nice of you, I think.
Elizabeth, your kindness knows no bounds.
Yeah.
Your bridesmaid is entitled to have someone there she knows. The person she wants to bring, I've only met once. He seems nice enough, and although she says their relationship is going really well, I'm not convinced about how serious they are or how important he is to her.
Is it for you to gauge?
Maybe you should send a questionnaire.
Maybe you should have sent her a pre-approved list of +1s.
They only met in October last year, continues Elizabeth. She refuses to refer to him as a boyfriend. I wonder how seriously Elizabeth has pushed her on this point.
Say it or your puppy gets it. No, I can't!
Boyfriend is my safe word. She refuses to refer to him as a boyfriend or any kind of label.
Sounds like feminism in action.
And has already dumped him once. Well, it's common, isn't it, in the early stages of a relationship to have doubts.
Just don't know.
You know, and then think, I do like him, but we're not quite up to boyfriend stage yet. I've expressed some reservations about all this, says Elizabeth, attempting to jokingly say, do you think you'll be together long enough to be at the wedding?
Ha ha ha! Good joke, Elizabeth!
Lol.
But she seems determined to bring him.
Well, you did say that she could.
That's right, yes. And then question her about it repeatedly, and the answer was yes, I would like to bring him. I think it seems unreasonable that she would change her mind.
Correct.
I just think, says Elizabeth, it would be better for her to bring along a friend rather than a relatively random man.
You've got to be really careful, Elizabeth, because, you know, there's the danger. You're getting married. You start to be very judgy about the unmarried people's relationships in your life. You're not an expert on their lives.
So, Helen, answer me this. Do I have any right to veto her choice?
No, you gave her the choice. If she was someone she'd picked up the week before, I could understand this.
Yes.
But
even then, what do you say?
Oh, right.
Oh, he seems a
what's
bit
his
of a
surname? Oh, not sure. Do you think he's really going to fit in?
This is actually the plot of the pilot episode of Bloodlines. I don't know if you've been watching
I haven't.
And in that, we see how bringing someone random along to a family event, it's not a wedding, but it's a big family event, can ruffle some feathers. But it provides a lot of drama and excitement in the pilot episode of Bloodlines compared to the rest of the series, which moves along at a more or less deathly pace.
But it's providing a lot of drama and excitement in this question from Elizabeth.
Well, this is the thing. I actually think it might be quite nice to introduce a little renegade element into the wedding. You know, because you know you're there because you want to make a loving commitment to your husband-to-be. Why not just shake things up a bit amongst the crowd?
Also, I think it actually speaks quite well of him that he wants to come to a wedding where even his girlfriend inverted commas, doesn't really know anyone, so he knows no one except her. That is usually quite boring when you're at a wedding where you know nobody, and yet he still wants to go, or he's still willing to go. That's pretty good of him, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. And he might be nice. You know, you've got to trust your friend's judgment. She likes him.
Have you met him?
She's met him once. She said he met him once, yeah. And seems nice enough.
Nice enough to come to your wedding.
Yeah, I think. That said, I would take the advice that I learned the hard way from watching my friends Jalyn and Shalini at their wedding. I was the best man. My girlfriend was in the wedding photo, obviously, when I was there, and our group of friends were photographed.
Yep.
The other three friends that were in the photo, there was Becky, there was Jeremy, there was Che. All three of them had partners with them at that wedding that they then split up with within 2 months. So within 2 months, that wedding photo was completely out of date. Yeah, and you couldn't chop them out. So what you have to do is you've got to keep the partners at the edge of the photo so you can crop them.
Oh, that's good advice.
Is that really such a painful?
Well, it's a bit weird, yeah, because
how often do you look at the wedding photo of your friend, not even the person that you were best man for?
The relationships ended so quickly that by the time the photos got developed from the photographer and presented to them in a wedding album, all of those relationships had fallen apart.
Couldn't they Photoshop in the faces of their newer partners?
Just onto the bodies of the people they were going with before.
Why not? The advice I give to pretty much every wedding question we get is what you want worth ruining a friendship over?
And the day, to an extent.
I give that with, wedding presents, bridesmaid issues, stuff. Think long term, Elizabeth, and just allow it. You said she could bring someone.
Yes.
You didn't say that you had to have the veto.
Yeah.
Just let her have it, unless he's like a complete reprobate who's going to kick everything over.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. What's going to happen?
Although, by allowing this person to bring a +1, someone else is now going to get upset that they can't. And that is something you've done now that in a way, possibly, arguably, you shouldn't have.
But this is a bridesmaid, you see, so she gets extra privileges.
So you can justify it, can't you? Yes, you can say, they're higher up the pecking order,
You're probably making her do a lot of annoying, expensive stuff, so give her the +1.
Yeah, okay. No, you've won me over. No, fair enough. Okay, you've done nothing wrong, Elizabeth, apart from the terrible thoughts you've had in your head.
Yeah, but just keep them in your head, and she doesn't need to know. It'll be fine. You won't even notice him on the day. You won't get to spend time with the people you really want to see. You won't even see this guy.
Yeah. Or
unless
he might be the life and soul of the party.
He might be. Yeah. You might run off with him.
It happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does in films.
Yeah.
Not so much in life.
You think not?
One hopes.
Yeah.
One hopes not.
I've never seen the bride run off with a guest at the party itself, but I have heard of relationships where people have met that way. But anyway, your solution remains pretty much the same, irrespective of the question.
It's not that important, Elizabeth. I know it's your money, but really, in the amount of money you're spending on this day, relatively small amount.
And my solution remains always the same.
Don't get married. People always ask one what one does for fun. Well, one enjoys watching Gok 1 and a fish called Wonder. One is also partial to One Direction and The Wanted and the short-lived Billy Corgan Band's One.
The Answer Me This Jubilee. 1 hour of Her Majesty's pleasure. Available now on iTunes.
Time for a question from Pat from Canada, who says, my husband and I were talking about where we would like to retire in about 10 years. Fortunately, money won't be a problem, she predicts confidently. It could be another global meltdown by then, Pat.
Maybe she's doing the Breaking Bad work scheme, but doing it right.
Money won't be a problem, but temperature will be.
Yeah.
You see, she says, my husband doesn't like the cold.
Nor do retirees, traditionally. You know, as your circulation slows down a bit, you feel the cold more.
Yeah, but here's the rub, Helen.
Oh.
I don't like the heat.
Me neither, Pat. Let's retire together.
Oh, dear. Potato.
No one in the world says potato. Listeners, please write in if you've ever heard anyone say potato. No, you haven't. No one's going to write in.
We both like the fall and spring temperatures, continues Pat, but he is miserable during the winter. It's like me.
I'd imagine a Canadian winter as well is quite brisk.
Indeed. And I am now dreading the oncoming summer.
Me too, Pat.
Helen, answer me this. Is there somewhere in the world where the temperature is always somewhere between 50 degrees Fahrenheit and 75 degrees Fahrenheit?
I think the fridge in our local Tesco's, judging by the ice lollies.
Where you might need a light jacket, but you don't have to have the air conditioner on or the furnace on most of the time.
I think, the Bay Area.
Yeah.
I haven't checked the exact temperature graph, but the Bay Area is fairly temperate all year round. And then if Pat wants to set up a startup or something, she's in the right place already.
Oh, everything about her email suggests she is ready to embark upon internet entrepreneurialism.
I think Tasmania is fairly even, and New Zealand. New Zealand has a lot of microclimates, so there's bound to be one to suit both of you.
Yes, and a lot of people I've heard that have visited New Zealand from Britain say that it's kind of like an idealised version of what the UK scenery should be like.
Cricket tees, all of that.
Yeah, but it's very green and lush because it rains, but it's not freezing cold because of the ozone layer being missing.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite bright and pleasant.
Yeah, they get a lot of sunshine, even though they also get a lot of rain.
The very south of England would be quite good. Somewhere like Cornwall.
Cornwall.
In winter, yes, it gets below. It does just about get below freezing.
You've got to have
quite cloudy.
a fire on. She's saying she doesn't want a fire in the winter.
There's not really
you
anywhere.
die if you live in Cornwall in the winter without a fireplace.
There really aren't places that never ever get cold and never ever get hot.
Stop saying that. Well, actually, okay, I've got a suggestion.
All right.
The Azores.
Really?
Archipelago off the coast of Portugal in the mid-Atlantic. It has a pretty consistent mild climate all year round.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I've been.
Yes, I know. You went at Christmas.
I went at Christmas, and I wouldn't exactly call it a sunshine break at Christmas. It's basically like a slightly dull British summer's day most of the year. The thing about the Azores is they are built on a volcanic set of islands as well, so there's a risk that the whole thing could go boom at any point. And they've had quite a few plane crashes there. Statistically. More likely to have a plane crash there than in other places.
Why?
Well, my theory is because it's pretty much the only landmass between Portugal and America. If your plane starts going down, then you crash land into the Azores, so that probably skews the stats, doesn't it?
Hello, Helen and Ollie. It's Mia. I'm 14 years old. Helen and Ollie and Martin Zalman, please answer me this. When I go to the supermarket and I'm frequently looking for the product that is quinoa or quinoa, which pronunciation is it? Is it quinoa or quinoa? I got very confused and asked the shop assistant for quinoa, and they said, wait, hang on, do you mean quinoa?
That's where we are in time. 14-year-olds are buying quinoa.
Absolutely, yeah.
Not cigarettes. Yeah. Ancient grains with high protein content.
Quinoa, isn't it, is the answer.
It's quinoa.
Yeah.
And the weird thing is, it used to be spelt Kinwa in the ancient Andean language whence it came, and then the Spanish conquerors changed it to quinoa with the infernal spelling.
Oh, is that right?
Cheeky Spaniards. They also forced the Incas to stop growing quinoa and start growing wheat because they knew that they used quinoa in religious ceremonies and they wanted to ruin it
But putting your David Crystal hat on for a second, and
Yes.
I know you have a hat made of all of his books, isn't it the case that as so many people are saying quinoa, in time it might be called that anyway, so maybe there's not a right and wrong here anyway?
I think it would just be better to change it back to quinoa.
With a K.
With a K and a Y at the
Yeah,
end.
I think that is probably better, yeah.
I'm in favour of phonetic spellings.
Yes. Well, maybe both will happen, actually. People will say quinoa and people will say quinoa and it will be spelled with a K. Then we'll end up in a yoghurt nightmare again, won't we?
no!
It'll be that all over again.
Oh.
Now, technically, because quinoa is a grain, you can, and I've never tried it, but you can theoretically make bread from it.
Yeah, I've used quinoa flour in biscuits and cakes.
How do they taste?
Quite a lot like quinoa, but with chocolate chips in.
I think quinoa bread is going to be the next big thing. You think about it, like twats like me that haven't eaten bread for 18 months, cutting out bread for my health. I don't know why I'm doing that. I just know that it was making me fat. I don't know if it's gluten. I don't know what that means.
It's because that which bread is made of just breaks down into sugar almost immediately.
Is that different with quinoa?
Yeah, because quinoa has higher protein content.
So why isn't Pret selling quinoa sandwiches? Because I'd buy one. I'd pay £6.50 for a stupid quinoa prawn cocktail sandwich. They've come. They're going to deliver it.
Quinoa for all the kids. I think it's probably the case that quinoa flour doesn't rise like bread flour does. That's the problem with a lot of these alternative grains, Ollie. They just don't make nice bread. You can make a nice quinoa chapati or tortilla wrap or something.
So basically, I've got the right idea from a branding point of view, but the grain has yet to adapt to my modern way of thinking.
Quinoa wraps, though, then you could be onto a winner.
Quinoa wraps?
Quinoa nachos. You could easily do that.
Why? I'm almost tempted to cut this out of the podcast and just go and start as an entrepreneur. Start this up right now.
Quinoa nachos, that sounds great.
I totally, and we're both of us twats enough that we'd pay more for a quinoa nacho to try them.
Well, because the grain does cost a lot.
You only have to try it once, and then suddenly you've got the next courgette ships.
Here's another question of supermarkets from Tom in Reading, who says, I was at Tesco Express earlier and saw a man take a single banana off a bunch and pay for it.
It's the new olive bar.
I've never done this before and wouldn't, because I would find it socially awkward separating a banana from its mates. You think, what if they want to get back to the banana party? But accept it is completely fine as you pay by weight. It got me thinking, though. Ollie, answer me this. Could you peel the banana and pay for it that way?
Well, you could. You could take a shit in the middle of the supermarket, couldn't you? But you wouldn't, because that would be obviously wrong.
Well,
What's
it's
he
not
saying?
obvious,
Is he saying
Tom.
way less to take the skin off the banana?
It would save money, says Tom.
But you're paying for
That's ridiculous.
This goes for all the packaging, doesn't it?
Yeah, you could debone a lamb shank and just chuck the meat in a bucket, couldn't you?
Surely the shop couldn't do anything about it. Obviously, you'd put it in a bag to stop it having to touch the disgusting scales, or worse, the cashier's hands. But then the banana comes in its own bag, made of its own skin.
Yeah, actually, did you see that? There was this sort of meme, wasn't there, on social media a couple of months ago, if someone had spotted Morrison's were individually packing bananas in cellophane.
For God's sake. But they do that with coconuts as well. The near impenetrable coconut gets shrink wrapped.
So bizarre. Got God's packaging on it.
Yeah. Well, Ollie, answer me this. Can you peel bananas before paying for them to save on weight?
You can, but you shouldn't. You obviously
Weirdo.
shouldn't, and you're weird.
If you wouldn't even separate a banana from a bunch if you wanted fewer bananas than on the bunch, then you're never going to have the guts to do this, Tom.
Well, I'm with Tom that I wouldn't have done that. I know what he's saying, you pay by weight, but
I've done that.
Have you?
And you do that with ginger as well. You snap off the amount of ginger you want.
No, never.
Yeah, of course.
Never. Literally never.
No, you're meant to.
The price of the banana is factored in the fact that some of it is dead weight and some of it's the skin. In the same way that when you get T-bone steak, you factor in the fact that there's a bone
Precisely,
in it.
yes. And in fact, if they'd peeled the banana, if you wanted a peeled banana, then you'd pay more for it to be packaged in a protective atmosphere where the banana hadn't gone off.
That's going to be the next thing, isn't it? Peeled bananas, like buying apple segments rather than a whole apple.
Why did people buy a packet of apple segments?
It's weird, isn't it?
It's babified.
I put my picture on Tinder, but nobody swiped right. I went on Match and OkCupid, no suitors would bite. My body clock is ticking and I need to find my Mr. Right. Or at least a willing donor.
With a personal website built through squarespace.com, you can edit text and pictures till you look like the bomb. And if you don't find a man, at least be comforted by the peeping Toms.
It's a cold comfort, I just want to be loved.
Thank you, Squarespace, for your support of this episode of Answer Me This.
And for you supporting websites that actually look good and work and are easy to build for even people like Muggins here.
Yeah, or Muggins here. My website, ollyman.co.uk, built with my fair hands using Squarespace.
Oh, we do have fair hands.
And isn't it beautiful?
It's a bit bright, I think.
It's fine. I mean, I'm not saying it's a great example of what you can do, but it's something that took me virtually no time at all. So well done, chaps, for designing something so lovely.
And you can make a store, and you can make a gallery or or a portfolio or a menu, have a play with their free trial, and then if you like it and you sign up, you can get 10% off for a year if you use the code ANSWER. And you're also demonstrating to Squarespace that you like this show, so they carry on giving us money to make the show, without which we could not make the show.
Everyone is a winner.
Yes.
Carly in Oxford says, a couple of days ago I was with a group of friends and we decided to play a friendly game of Monopoly.
No such thing!
However, we never actually managed to play, as we couldn't get round the board once due to a major dispute over the rules.
Sounds fun.
I've always played with the rule that you cannot purchase anything on your first go round the board.
Oh, it's like the peloton, where the cyclists have to stay behind the guide bike until near the end.
Yeah, the Grand Prix, they do that as well, don't they, first lap?
Yeah.
But my friend claims this is not true.
Mm-hmm.
She says, I've searched and searched, but I cannot find a confirmation of either rule. So Helen, answer me this. Can you buy properties on the first go round the board?
Yes. There's nothing in any of the official rules that I have read that says you can't. What you can't do is build houses and hotels on the first round.
Yeah, but
you can't buy a street and then build on it in the same go.
But that's in any round, isn't it? That's not just the first round the board. You can't buy Pall Mall and then start building hotels instantly anyway.
But that means by default in the first go round no one is buying any houses or hotels.
But it doesn't make the first round special. So
no.
Yeah.
What I did not know is that if you choose not to buy the property that you've landed on, the banker can then auction it off. I don't know if I've ever played by those rules.
Is that a standard rule?
Yeah.
No one plays that. It's not how life works, though, is
also,
it?
Also, it takes out the element of chance. Then it is just pure capitalism. Well,
and also strategy, because you might think, well, I don't want to buy this now because I'm speculating, but also I don't want someone else to have it, so I better buy it. You don't want to have to buy it just so no one else buys it.
No, indeed. And the point of you having that strategic talk with yourself because you don't know whether you can land on it again in the future is the fun bit of the game. If you think, well, next time someone else lands on it and they don't want it, I'll buy it from them.
Yeah,
it's a bit boring.
Yeah.
But I guess the game would be over much quicker if you play by the official rules.
The game is never over quickly, though.
No, but maybe because no one plays by the official rules. And the thing that I like, but again, it extends the game, is the thing, if you ever played this, where you put all the fines that you give to the banker in the middle of the board, and then when someone lands on free parking, bonanza.
Oh, yeah, we used to play that rule.
That's good fun.
Yeah.
Because if someone goes from being pretty much bankrupt and about to leave the game to winning everything, great game,
it's
but
just
then
not
it
a
lasts that little bit
meritocratic
longer.
game.
This is Katie from Christchurch in New Zealand. I was just talking with my boyfriend about new board games we could try, and I remember that I once saw an M&M version of Monopoly, and it made me wonder how many versions of Monopoly are there. Every time we go to stores, we always count them, and the most we've ever seen is, I think, 17. But Helen and Ollie and Martin, the soundman, answer me that. How many types of Monopoly are there in the world?
It's an odd little quirk, isn't it? Every time you see a brand extension for Monopoly, that you then count how many are in the store.
They have to, otherwise the house will burn down. A bit of OCD.
It is a little bit, isn't it? That's the thing. It's kind of a funny thing to do once when you're bored in Toys R Us. To then make it into a trend feels a bit odd.
Also, Katie, are you keeping a log? Because you might be counting one novelty Monopoly set several times.
Well, actually,
you might see it every time you go to the store rather than there being new ones.
You don't need to keep a log because a man, I assume it's a man, it must be a man, called Yehuda online, has been keeping a list since 2006 of every Monopoly spin-off game. Would you care to guess how many he has catalogued? I'll give you the provisos first.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't included translations. So, for example, some of the spin-offs, like, I don't know, Pixar Cars, like, he hasn't counted all 50 translations of Pixar Cars Monopoly. That counts as one.
Yes, quite right.
So but he has included the unofficial ones, because not all of them are made by Parker Brothers and Waddingtons and whatever.
Hasbro.
Some of them are obviously a bit dubious, but they've all ended in the word opoly. So he hasn't included the ones that are called, like, Oxford Street in a box, which is basically the same but isn't Monopoly. So he's included the ones that end opoly
and have the same board format.
Have the same board format but aren't necessarily official tie-ins.
Okay.
How many? He's been counting since 2006. Recently updated last month.
242.
242 says, Helen, do you have any rise on that?
I was going to go around that. I was going to say 256.
You are both way off. When I tell you way off, I'm seriously not
700.
Okay, and a final rise from Martin on 700.
1013.
2,769.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there a version shitter than the Monopoly spin-off we've got, which is the Wolverhampton version?
Hey!
There's Baghdad. I mean, that would be fascinating, I suppose.
Well, if it's a good way to learn about new places, like if before you went there on holiday, you could just look at all the...
It's very skewed, though, isn't it? Like the London one. You're like, I'm going to go to the Waterworks, and then I'm going to go to the Old Kent Road. And then Mayfair.
There are some really fun ones. There's an Angry Birds one, obviously, that came out a couple of years ago.
Simpsons one.
What are the locations for Angry Birds, then? Because I don't remember it being very geographically grounded.
That's a good point, yeah. It's going to be... They probably have to say, like, Redbird's house and shit like that. I'm not very interested. It's types of forest, I guess. But there's a Metallica one.
Oh,
but you'd quite like that one.
And what are they like songs then that you stop at?
I imagine.
And the jail is Napster.
And there's a BBC Radio 1 version where presumably a lot of their presenters go straight to jail. What?
Well, it
Hey?
depends on the era. If it's 70s Radio 1.
I imagine it is. I don't think Radio 1 would do a Monopoly tie-in now. It doesn't feel right, does it?
If it came out now, I would feel too old to play it.
If you got a question, answer me this podcast to Google mail.com. But you haven't got a scoop, answer me this podcast to Google mail.com. Or if you really have to phone 0208-123-588-777. If you're up with the time, answer me this podcast at Google mail.com. So ask a question to Helen and Ali, Martin the Soundman, shit all the Terry to pieces. Answer me this podcast to Google mail.com.
Here's a question from Carly, who says, my flatmate travels for work, and I have looked after her 2 cats for 5 of the past 9 months. Before her most recent trip, she said she didn't have a will.
Of course, that would be the natural conversation you'd have, wouldn't it, just before you leave to go on a work trip. By the way, if I die, just want you to know, haven't got a will, enjoy the flat.
But that if she died, she wanted the cats to go back to the breeder and not to her family. I was a bit surprised that she didn't ask if I wanted the cats, as I'm the only other person they have a bond with.
Yes.
That's what cats want you to think.
Exactly. That is almost entirely in your head.
Exactly.
They have a bond in that they've recognised that you feed them when your flatmate isn't there.
Those little manipulatrixes.
They look for the tasty bits once you're dead.
I'm not a cat person, says Carly, but I really feel that if my flatmate dies, I am the best person to take the cats.
Right.
They are very attached to me, and I am quite fond of them. So, Ollie, answer me this. Am I wrong to intend to take the cats should she die?
Yes, you are wrong to do that if the will states otherwise. You'd be breaking the law.
Yes, but she doesn't have a will. But then you think if she's so determined for her family not to get the cats, if she dies without a will, her family will automatically get the cats. So
They might not want the cats.
No, exactly. So you need, Carly, to make a deal with the family that if she dies, you'll get the cats, but then it will sound like you are going to bump her off in order to get the cats, and therefore if she does have an accident, it's going to look bad for you.
Suspicion will fall on you, the cat killer, they'll call you.
If she's dead, she won't know who gets the cats. What if the breeder doesn't want them? The breeder is probably the one person not short of cats.
True. Actually, viewing this from the position of the cat person, if you actually said, look, I'd love to take the cats because I think that they have a bond with me. Actually, your flatmate would probably be thrilled. She probably thinks, oh God, I've burdened my flatmate with the cats. She puts up with it, but she wouldn't want to actually look after them.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, I've found is that as a cat person, leaving my cat with a non-cat person is actually quite traumatic for me.
Right.
So that's why she's probably saying just off the top of her head, oh, I'd rather it went to the breeder, because then you know that the breeder at least not going to kill the cat by accident. Whereas you leave with a non-cat person. So my mate Che lived in our house for a week last year.
Yeah.
We went to France. He looked after the cat. We had a text message from him whilst we were in Honfleur, many hundreds of miles away, saying, Coco's just done a big shit on the floor. Now, that never happens. That has never happened the whole time we've owned her.
Well, not that you've noticed.
That would be very odd behaviour indicative of something seriously ill.
Right. Depends on the texture of the shit. She might have just been a punk.
Yeah, she might just be uncomfortable with someone on her territory.
It could be that, but it made us worried immediately because we thought, well, that's never happened before. And then the whole way through the holiday, me and my girlfriend were like, we didn't think we'd go back because the cat had done a shit, but we did think, right, in the future the cat's going to a cattery. We're not going to give it to a non-cat person who doesn't understand. And then actually when we got back and I saw her behaviour, I realised that probably almost certainly what had happened is she'd done a spew, which is commonplace.
Yeah.
Cats do that all the bloody time. And it had firmed up in the heat of the summer sun and looked like a shit. Now, a cat person would have identified that immediately and not even called me about it.
Yeah.
But because he was like, well, she's done a shit in the middle of the carpet, I had to clean it up, I had to use cat carpet cleaner, all this stuff. I was like, oh my God, she's really ill. So it's just maybe it's just that anxiety of leaving your cat with a non-cat person.
Maybe you need to leave your cat with a non-cat person and a card index with all the different kinds of things that could emerge from your cat with a picture next to them, so they know what to look out for.
Take a gallery of all the different bodily fluids that have emerged from your cat over the course of the year so that they're well prepared.
This brings us to the end of this episode of Answer Me This.
But
do send us questions for the next episode via email, phone or Skype, and our contact details are on our website,
AnswerMeThisPodcast.com. And remember, the weeks that you don't get a shiny new episode of Answer Me This on a Thursday, there will be an episode waiting for you of both The Allusionist, Helen's podcast, and the media podcast, my podcast, to keep you entertained and amused.
That's good value, isn't it?
Well, for free, yeah.
You could mix them together and pretend that we're in the same studio.
The Media Allusionist.
You have to chuck in some Brain Train or Send the Ladies podcast to have made it.
Think about it.
Absolutely.
And you can also congregate with us online at Facebook and Twitter. And just remains for us to say thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this episode.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening.
Bye!